Religion is an important piece of life for many people. In some cases, religion can impact politics and society in a nation. In fact, even with the separation from church and state principle, religion affects the United States in areas of politics and society as a whole. The country is actually founded upon religion, therefore, religion in the United States.
During the early 1600s, England persecuted those that opposed the Anglican Church or the Church of England. Among these groups were the Pilgrims or Separatists that wished to separate themselves from the Church of England. Groups like the Pilgrims desired refuge, and the Stuart kings allowed this, seeing America as a solution to their problem.
An example of a colony in New England which Pilgrims founded is Plymouth Colony, established September 1620. However, they expecting to be in Virginia, so their charter was no good. So based upon good morals, some impacted by the Pilgrim religion, helped create the Mayflower Compact. Another religious group seeking refuge from England was the Puritans. The Puritans were persecuted for their determination to purify the Anglican Church. They believed they were the epitome of rightful living, so they left for America to live their religion freely and be an example for many to follow. Speaking of rightful living, two principles the Puritans lived by include predestination and conversion. Predestination is the belief that God knows everything, including the future, and those who are destined for salvation. Therefore, conversion, the induction to church membership, was given to those whom the Puritans felt were predestined for salvation. These church members decided most decisions in the colony. However, women were excluded from this. The soul is in two parts, the immortal masculine half and the mortal feminine half. Names like silence, patience, fear, etc. explain the Puritan perspective of women. The Puritans believed in the union of religion with politics and society. The Puritans believed that government should tax everyone to teach children the Bible. Fines were given to those who did not attend church, and harsh punishments for those who were straying away from God. Such punishments include hangings, the stockade, exile, and public humiliation. Public humiliation is depicted in the Scarlet Letter. Because of large numbers of Puritans migrating, over 14,000, the Plymouth colony was absorbed by its size, and the New England colonies were dominated by a Puritan majority. In the New England colonies, the Puritans depended on religion to reason or make inferences about things that were different or scary for them. The most tragic incident of this would be the Salem witch trials. They began with the arrival of the slave, Tituba, who would do black magic. Some incidents that puzzled Puritans was strange dancing in the woods. They concluded that Tituba and others were witches doing devil worship, etc. They used 5 points of evidence that someone could be a witch. One is that if the accused said the Lord's Prayer and people reacted negatively or screamed, the accused was found guilty of being a witch. Physical evidence like moles or birthmarks were considered portals for the devil to enter, and another form of evidence. Witness testimony, or actual evidence of sorcery being done by the accused, was another form of evidence. Spectral evidence included witness testimony of the person's spirit or ghost roaming about. The final piece of evidence is confession. Although many were not really witches, it was the only way out. In result, they were not executed, but often had to reveal other witches. George Jacob Sr. and his granddaughter Margaret are both accused of witchcraft, but Margaret managed to escape harm by claiming that her grandpa was indeed a witch. He was convicted and hanged in August 1692. Witches weren't the only disliked people in the New England colonies. Those who spoke out against the church, like Roger Williams, were banished. Roger Williams believed in the separation of church and state, religious freedom, and believed taking the land from Native Americans was unfair. Therefore, after being banished, he left Boston land for the Native Americans and started the colony of Rhode Island. In addition, Anne Hutchinson disapproved of predestination because she didn't see the point or justification of trying hard to repent or follow the law if many were destined to perish anyway. She was then tried for heresy and exiled. She settled in Rhode Island. Like Hutchinson and Williams, Thomas Hooker disagreed with the Puritans because he wanted to open political and voting rights to non-church members, so he founded Hartford in 1636. In 1637, John Davenport disagreed with Massachusetts Bay that he wanted a closer tie between religion and government, so he established New Haven. The colony abolished juries because they were not present in the Bible. Most people were punished without being able to present a defense. Blue laws that enforced strict religion included punishments like death penalty for blasphemy and cursing one's parents. The Middle Colonies held a variety of religions such as Quakers, Mennonites, Lutherans, Dutch Calvinists, and Presbyterians. However, the Quakers are probably the most significant because they founded Pennsylvania and are probably the most religiously tolerant of the groups. William Penn gained the charter for Pennsylvania because the king gave it to him in exchange for freedom from his debt from Will's father. William was happy for this charter because he wanted a refuge for the persecuted Quakers, or the Society of Friends, which were persecuted for their strong belief in equality, which justified not bowing to nobles, and their belief in pacifism, which enabled them not to join war efforts or pay taxes that funded the military. In America, the Quakers let women join in church meetings, did not have a tax-supported church, and they practiced religious freedom but expected others to follow their moral code. This included no line which banned play performances as well as all forms of gambling. The Quakers allowed slavery if the slaves were treated justly. However, the Quakers would be the first anti-slavery organization. In the southern colonies, religion was not a huge impact except for Maryland, which was a Catholic refuge. It was founded in 1632 by Cecilius Calvert because the Protestants dominated the colonies. The Catholic colony feared the Protestants. Therefore, they passed the Maryland Toleration Act in response to that. This promoted religious toleration and freedom, culminated the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights.
The early traces of the First Great Awakening in America were initiated by the Presbyterians in Pennsylvania and New Jersey in the 1730s. Led by William Tennant, a Scots-Irish immigrant, and his family, religious revivals were initiated, and a seminary to train clergymen to preach in order to convert sinners was established. The religious revival soon spread, and the Great Awakening was sparked by Jonathan Edwards in Northampton, Massachusetts. Edwards was a congregational minister who accepted the teachings of Calvinism and refused to convert to the Church of England. He started seeing that people cared more about wealth than John Calvin's principles. Edwards also wrote Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. George Whitefield, a minister from New England, toured the colonies to preach and gave sermons anywhere he could. He preached that the salvation of every sinful human being was completely dependent on God. Whitefield preached in a dramatic way, almost theatrical, which led to large crowds attending his sermons. Whitefield allied with Anglican clergymen John and Charles Wesley to reform the Church of England. This eventually led to the formation of the Methodist Church. Soon many itinerant preachers emerged. For example, Gilbert Tennant's sermon on the danger of an unconverted ministry set off protests from ministers who were insulted by the sermon. All the religious revival led to America to become divided by New Lights and Old Lights. The New Lights were defenders and supporters of revivalism. They set up their own schools and churches, for example, Princeton University. Old Lights, however, opposed revivalism. They did not accept the new style of worship and substituted morality for religion. Charles Chauncey, a minister from the First Church of Boston, opposed revivalism and questioned the revivalists' and itinerant preachings. The Great Awakening encouraged men and women to speak up and take an active role in their salvation.
The Second Great Awakening began in the 1790s and lasted until the 1830s. It was sparked by a change in theology. By the 18th century, most people were Congregationalists, Episcopalians, and Quakers, and by 1800, Evangelical Methodism and Baptists were the largest group. Both blacks and women began to participate in evangelical revivals at the end of the 18th century. From these revivals grew the roots of both feminism and abolitionist movements. Camp meetings led extraordinary numbers of people to convert through enthusiastic style of preaching and audience participation. Evangelical churches generally had a populist orientation that favored ordinary people over elites. For instance, individual piety was seen as more important for salvation than the formal university training required for ministers in traditional Christian churches. Thus, lay people took a major religious and administrative roles within evangelical congregations. Most evangelical churches relied on itinerant preachers to reach large areas without an established minister. Evangelical churches also placed greater emphasis on humans' ability to change their situation for the better by stressing that individuals could assert their free will in choosing to be saved and by suggesting that salvation was open to all human beings. They also embraced an optimistic view on human condition. Because of the Second Great Awakening, the United States became more Protestant. White women had greater public roles, and there was a much higher African American participation in Christianity. Charles Finney led revivals in the North. He was a Presbyterian who converted to Methodism and preached that salvation can be only achieved through spontaneous conversion like his own, and that evil is avoidable and anyone can achieve salvation. The Second Great Awakening influenced the founding of the American Society for the Promotion of Temperance, the American Temperance Society, which considered drinking widespread and deadly and was led by evangelists. American Society for the Promotion of Temperance was organized to promote pledges of abstinence. Its influence was powerful. The asylum movement was also influenced by the Second Great Awakening. Formerly, the disturbed individuals were isolated from the society. However, Dorothea Dix worked to reform asylums to better accommodate patients. William Lloyd Garrison was also another individual who was also influenced by the abolitionist roots of the Second Great Awakening. He was an abolitionist and journalist who wrote The Liberator, which helped to push anti-slavery on the national agenda. Gradualists and immediatists grew from the abolition movements. Gradualists believed that slavery was sinful, but they feared that if they pushed it too fast, it would destroy the harmony and order that can be achieved through peaceful reform. Immediatists were mostly young evangelicals active in benevolent societies. Many became ordained ministers and had personal contact with free blacks and felt sympathy toward African American rights. Frederick Douglass took active roles in abolition of and rebellion against slavery. He also worked alongside Garrison. American Anti-Slavery Society was an abolitionist society founded by William Lloyd Garrison in 1833 during the Second Great Awakening. Women reformers also became more prominent. Angelina and Sarah Grimke are two of the major reformers for women's rights. The Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments was a manifesto by the Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls. It broadcasted the injustices suffered by women and launched the women's rights movement. In the 1820s, Joseph Smith founded the Mormons and the Book of Mormon. However, they were outcasted by many religious groups in the eastern United States. However, they did not move west until after the Second Great Awakening.
The religious status in America during the 1950s is considered the good life. Church and synagogue attendance increased, and religion became a common piece of American identity according to the chart. The three segments in identity in this area include Catholic, Jewish, and Protestant. However, Americans desire to have a more personalized religion rather than succumbing to these groups.
Religions in the 1980s tried to restructure themselves. With Reconstruction came conflict. A division between religious liberals and a conservative movement was evident. Liberal churches stressed the message of the social gospel, while conservatives emphasized obedience to a higher power and piety. Jews started taking positions on political spectrums and were involved in Jewish national organizations. Methodists took consistent moderate liberal positions on social and political issues. Ecumenism was adopted by churches in order to consolidate limited resources. The Lutheran Church formed the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America and also consisted of the American Lutheran Church and Association of Evangelical Lutheran Churches. Catholics began to question their church's doctrines and sought greater flexibility from the church hierarchy. Religion also started to become personalized. The New Age movement was a religious system with two basic beliefs: global unity and evolutionary godhood. The New Age movement brought many new innovations and traditions to society, while traditional churches started to decline and fall back with keeping pace with society while also maintaining their foundation. Soon, extremism emerged, and the ultimate goal was purity and simplicity. The new Christian right had a mission to bring a strong Christian morality into politics. People used electronic and media resources and went from liberal to conservative religion.